Hi, I'm Matt DiGiuseppe, owner of Skylar Barbershop in Watervliet, New York. We watch Channel 17, WVLT. We offer military discounts, police discounts, every Tuesday, plus senior citizen discounts. Thank you for watching WVLT, Channel 17.
Hello everyone, I'm Mary Jo Hughes, and you are joining us today at the Henrata Apartments in Watervliet, a residence owned and operated by the Watervliet Housing Authority, which houses 68 senior apartments. The Housing Authority offers many seminars, activities, and aids to its residents throughout the year. This evening, Congressman Paul Tonko will be speaking to the seniors about issues that concern them the most. Now let's join in.
Okay, everybody, we're ready to start. I'm happy that everybody was able to make it out that could, and I wanted to introduce our Congressman Paul Tonko. Paul represents our area, and he's been a great supporter of not only Watervliet but our area, but also of housing itself. We've been down to Washington and Albany to speak to the Congressman on many occasions, especially on some housing issues that has been affecting us. And over the time period, the Congressman has been very supportive, although sometimes we can't get some of the things that we all need to get because it's only one vote. So, but I know he supports us and he supports you. So what we wanted to do tonight was basically have the Congressman come, talk to the residents, tell you what we're expecting. A lot of you are seniors here that, we want to be able to tell you, what we might be expecting. Are we expecting cuts? Are we expecting a lot of maybe more improvements of some sort, or is it going to be status quo, especially on the housing issues? But there are other issues here that are affecting, us, and I think there are tons of different things that have come up lately: gun control, violence, the sequester, the fiscal cliff, all those types of things that are affecting everything that we do. Social Security, paying in, paying out, whatever it's going to be. But all these things, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he manages it all. I mean, before, I think there was a time where there was only a few items that we had to be concerned about at a time. Now it seems like there's almost everything is hitting us, and it's hitting us all at once. Unemployment, is up there. We just saw something on the veterans. I know we're going to be asked to help out with the veterans. There's unemployment, there's homelessness, there's the housing shortage and everything else like this. So I was going to ask the Congressman to speak on what's going on in Washington, tell you what he's thinking might happen, what his positions are, what he thinks might be going on. Think of a few questions that you might want to answer, Congressman, and we'll go from there. And I want to thank you for coming, Congressman.
Thank you, Charlie.
There you go. For you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie, for your kind introduction and your invitation to join with everyone this evening. And to be with Watervliet seniors is always a pleasure. You're a high-spirited group, and you know how to share the socialization factor very well. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you to Channel 17 for the opportunity to share our thoughts to an even larger audience. So might I begin with the State of the Union and the message made by the President to acknowledge the beginning point of our exercise in Washington to put together a budget, and then also to talk about the goals, the vision that the administration has, and the challenges that we face as a nation, and the strengths that we're enjoying, and how to move forward. So it's like putting a plan together and sharing it with the family of America, just as we would a budget. As we look at a household budget and look for the dollars coming in and the dollars that we anticipate to be spent into the future. Now, I share the sentiments that our President, President Obama, shared in his State of the Union message, that a thriving middle class is that engine that will drive the best economic recovery. Without a thriving middle class, think about it, it doesn't work that well. So I am a strong proponent of those programs that will reinforce, underpin the foundation for our middle class and provide fairness in tax policy. So to do that, I believe that we need to move forward with a number of issues that strengthen the outcome from an investment perspective, that strengthen it from a belt-tightening perspective, where we look at waste and inefficiency and fraud and outmoded programs to reduce what we are spending out there. But at the same time, we're challenged in this economic sweepstakes, the global race on clean energy, high-tech, and the ideas economy, to compete with other nations so as to continue our efforts to stay strong as a nation. And then, of course, we need to look at revenues that might be new, additional to what we enjoy today. Now, a lot of this is perhaps, if we roll it back to a starting point, which is talking about what drove the recession. And if we look at some of the mistakes that were made, we're apt, hopefully, not to repeat those mistakes. The driving forces that equated to trillions, that's with a T, trillions of dollars that drove our deficit situation, that drove a recession, included a tax cut without a payment mechanism that gave a lot of benefit to the upper echelon in our economic ladder, income ladder. It was about 2 wars that were fought as a nation, Afghanistan being the longest fought war in our history, without being on budget. And then it was about a pharmaceutical deal that was worked out in Part D of Medicare without a payment mechanism. So, my friends, this is somewhat like swiping the card over and over at the counter, but not making a payment on your card's bill. So when the payments came, you ignored it, but you kept swiping the card, and sooner or later, the chickens come home to roost. And that was a situation that found us in a recession where we were losing as many as 800,000 jobs a month at the lowest point of the recession. When I came to town to represent this region in 2009, in January of 2009, we are still in that situation, losing 700 to 800,000 jobs a month, 8.2 million jobs in total during the recession. That's a huge impact that you know is going to make itself felt on the economic situation of our country. People lost trillions of dollars collectively from coast to coast through situations where they trusted the management of their portfolio, their income as a household, to situations that saw that fail. And so because of the collapse of the economy, trillions were lost. But this whole budget thing, 2 wars, a pharmaceutical deal, and a tax cut that could not be afforded, that there was no payment mechanism for, drove the recession. And so we look at now planning that will pull us out of this recession that has begun already. We've had 35 consecutive months. When I came in January of 2009, I can tell you that the lowest point was March of 2009. And ever since then, we have swung upward so that we have 6.1 million jobs that have been created in the private sector, and we have had 35 consecutive months of economic growth. But that's not good enough when you lost 8.2 million jobs, and we need also to make certain that the recovery is reaching all neighborhoods, all families, all individuals. How do we do that? Well, I think it's important for us to look at a plan that is balanced, that looks at revenues and looks at spending and investment. If we do it all with spending cuts, we could set back the economy. We could put it back into a recession, if not a full-blown depression. There's talk that we could lose as many as 1 million jobs with this item called sequestration that Charlie made mention of, and it would not invest in areas of activity that we need to invest in order to enjoy the strongest, most robust comeback that we can muster. The issue of the sequestration came up for a vote over a year ago. and it was dealing with the situation of paying our bills, the debt ceiling limit. And that has always been a clean vote. 70 sometimes, I believe, our nation took that vote via its members of Congress. And when they did that, they put together a straightforward measure that gave a green light to paying the bills. When they did this over a year ago, they added bells and whistles to the concept. And we ended up with this clever word called sequestration, which means that we definitely have to deal with a policy format that came out where a special committee was charged with reducing $1.2 trillion from our budget. Absent that work getting done, sequestration would kick in on March 1st of this given year to cut $1.2 trillion from both domestic and in total from domestic programming and defense. It was decided in that sequestration concept that it would be equal, so that $600 billion would come from domestic programs, $600 billion from defense programming. And then further, they required an 8.2% cut at the time to all programs across the board. Now, I voted against the measure, and I'll tell you why, because I didn't think that the approach that we take to this very difficult situation of reducing the size of our government should be done in a mindless fashion, in a thoughtless way. We ought not, just cavalier style, say that 50% weighted for both defense and domestic should be our outcome. Who says that we may not need more investment on the domestic side? Why just 50-50? And it just seemed whimsical to go and do that even split. And then further, to across the board cut programs by 8.2%, which might end up being as high as 13%, because if we delay this, we need to get an annual impact over less than 12 months, so that it might be as high as 13%. But regardless, whatever the number is, if it were the 8.2%, to cut every program by that same measure without checking its worthiness, without checking the value added that comes with that investment, would be foolish, in my opinion. It's a great way to kill a good program, to defund a good program. And it's also the best way to keep a bad program alive, because they wouldn't get perhaps zeroed out if we deem it ineffective or unnecessary. So, you know, when somebody brought it to light the other day, a colleague of mine put it this way: if you lost your job and you had to address less dollars at home, just put it right down into the household, the family income. If you lost your job and you had to tighten your budget, and you were used to going to the local grocery store, but you also on weekends would love going to the theater to catch a movie or two. If you were put in that situation, would you say equal cuts? Would you say, okay, we're going to cut the grocery bill by this much and an equal amount from the theater? You know, one of the basics is to eat and maintain nutrition and stay healthy and well. So you would probably, many people would suggest that you cut more deeply into that theater ticket budget rather than the food bill. Those are choices that need to be made collectively with all members of Congress, but mindfully, academically, analytically, putting it into a classroom exercise rather than just whimsically saying 50% from defense, 50% from domestic, and across the board on every program. 8%, 5%, 13%. It doesn't make sense. And where we're at now is with precious few days left. When we left Washington on Friday, we had a vote to adjourn. I voted no, because I believe, like those colleagues who voted no with me, we should stay at the table and bang away at this process until we get a solution. Because when that clock hits March 1st, at that stroke of midnight, we then go into sequestration as a mode of solution. And it means domestic programs, from nutrition programs to weatherization, where you tighten up an environment and make the household more energy efficient, to programs for HEAP to enable you to pay bills, to programs for housing that enable Charlie and those across the country who manage authorities like this to cut into those programs. Education, healthcare, safety networks, food inspectors, people that govern or regulate the airports and the flights in and out. All of these are put at risk. They're put at risk. And it makes no sense to me to put a situation like that into a non-workable outcome. It needs to maintain its doability. And when we do this, it's not just an accounting ledger or moving shelves on the table. It's actual lives that are affected. People who rely on services that won't realize those services will be impacted negatively. You know, there's a lot of talk of dismissing all these government programs and government itself. But when we come down to it, there is a partnership. When did we see it dramatically expressed? Well, in this area, when Irene and Lee hit. And just recently in our state south of us, when Superstorm Sandy hit. And I can tell you from personal experience, when someone was talking to you at the site where their home used to be located in Schoharie County, but now was miles down the river, totally, all that was left on a stump was a hardwired phone. When you tell that person that Washington told me that we can't get money for that situation, they don't want to hear about no government. So we need to be wise, we need to be thoughtful, we need to be deliberative in the attempt to make certain that effective government is the outcome. And this is ineffective. It's not efficient government. It's not quality that we require and deserve. This fight is about the dignity of people. We pride ourselves on this nation being set apart from so many because of the factors we take into mind and heart and soul. There should be a moral compass that directs us and guides us and challenges us. And that's the way we do business and do it best. So I'm going to continue to fight as we return next week and we push to the midnight hour. I'm going to fight for the smart approach. Let's think about who we're impacting here. Let's think about the many seniors who are impacted, the many youngsters in single-digit age that are impacted. Let's think about people who won't have claims processed through Social Security because they will reduce that workforce. Let's think about the safety measures that apply to food or bridges or airport regulation. Let's move forward in the wisest of fashions. So it's great to be here with you. I see our mayor has joined us and other officials. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And Charlie, do we want to move to comments and questions that people might have?
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask any questions from the congressman, they can. I just want to let you know, too, I know this is, as far as the Housing Authority is concerned, last year we lost $800,000. $800,000 in funding that we were supposed to get. HUD, what they did in their infinite wisdom, put that money into other housing authorities that did not have significant amount of money in their reserves to carry them forward. So they took our money and said, you have enough reserves, we'll give it to somebody else who didn't have the reserves. So what's that put us in? So that takes our reserves and reduces our reserves at the same time. Well, that isn't setting well with me. It didn't set well with a lot of the other housing authorities that had the same thing. We can handle it for another little while, but then again, we'll be in the same predicament as everybody else, no reserves. So it's borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, whatever else you want to call it, but the outcome is really the same. Unfortunately for us, not like any place else, we are not bound by, we don't have a tax cap because we can't tax. We can't raise your rents. The only thing that we can do, the raise, is maybe increase the laundry fees, and what's that? Maybe $50 a year? You know, I mean, it's not going to make anything, it's not going to make up $800,000. So we still need to keep fighting, we still need to do it. One of the things I wanted to ask the congressman is, what ways do we get to tell you on where, is it an email? Is it a letter? Is it a phone call? How do you, I mean, even any resident here where they want to, convey what their thoughts are. I know what the media is, but not everybody here has, the electronic media. How do you like to get that? Is it?
Sure. Before I answer that question, let me just say that Charlie expressed the housing situation very accurately and effectively. And the only part that worried me a bit was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. So I can tell you that's not true.
I didn't mean that,
No,
Paul.
no. Only kidding. Only kidding. Only kidding. But you know what? But you do raise a point, because it is about fairness. And why did programs like that get cut, as we were fighting against that cut? Why did they get cut? Because the other form of spending. Spending's a bad word these days. I think when you look at investments in housing provide for quality of life, safety, dignity. When that investment is less worthy than having to continue the spending for a tax cut that goes to echelons that were doing better than the middle income crowd, where's the justice? Where's the best outcome here? In terms of communicating your concerns, any and all forms and fashion. Phone calls to the district office. Sean Shortell is with us today. Sean is one of my coworkers. He's our district director. When we get the phone calls, we move to get the best answers we can for you. Sometimes we succeed. Sometimes, there's restrictions in the programming or in the law, and it gives us an idea on how to improve it with an amendment to the law. But the point of the matter is any form of communication, dialogue like this is the best. Visiting with people, which we love to do routinely. Absent that, phone calls, faxes, emails, letters. I mean, we get tons of letters, but communicate. Our system works best when we are engaged fully with the republic that guides us. And in this democracy, it's important that the republic engage its people. We know that that's a powerful tool. And letting people, just hearing anecdotal evidence helps, not only to put the meter where it needs to be, but more importantly, to put a face on a situation. So when we express some of these concerns, we can talk about Charlie telling us in Watervliet that there's an injustice going on with the Housing Authority, and that the dollars rightfully should belong in reserves that were set aside by the rules and regs that were established, and that they maintain that reserve here. Putting a face to all of the arguments is the best thing, because when it all gets boiled down to the bottom line, it's about impacting people, impacting families, impacting veterans and retirees, and however labeled we get in this society. It's about us. And after all, it's us coming together, doing the community thing from coast to coast that puts a best spin on a budget, in my opinion. Other questions that you might have? Anyone? Yes? Okay, I'm hearing if there's a furlough. First of all, under martial law and talking about civilian impact and furloughs, whether people are on duty or on call for duty. A furlough is exactly that. When you're cutting the workforce or displacing people until the income is there, the revenues are there, they're not going to be at work. That's why the impact of furloughs for so many programs would be painful. In terms of justice in the outcome of the budget, we need to make certain that everyone is treated fairly with the same set of rules applied. And, I believe fully that for our military, the first order of investment is toward protecting the troops and making certain that our sons and daughters who are in harm's way are not only given a just remuneration for their service, but also well protected. In this day and age of technology, protection of those troops is absolutely essential. But that is not to say that we can't find savings within the Pentagon. That is to say that, under whatever context we review the budget, it is important for us to have a good review of that situation so that if we can belt tighten, without damaging the impact on the troops, we need to do so. Other questions that people might have on any programs? Okay. Should I be sharing this mic with people? Is that helping, Mary Jo? Well, if it's a comment, I'll have our guest, Jean.
I have heard you speak numerous times, as you know, because I go to all the Democratic things, whatever. And I have never seen anybody be as truthful and as honest and as how you feel about what you're doing in Washington. And I know everybody appreciates it because people have told me.
Well, thank you. I think that we're in such tough times that we need very much to relate what all the actions suggested, either growing a budget or reducing it, cutting into certain spending and investment. We need to calculate exactly what that means. And so I appreciate your sentiments, but, as an engineer, I love to get analytical in this job. I love to search for what really is the best solution and to do that based on facts, not emotion, not fiction. And, there are certain orders of investment today that I see absolutely sacred. We in this area live in what is deemed to be the most fast-growing area in the country for clean energy, high-tech, innovation jobs across the country. So for us to continue that and provide more strength in the economy, because if more people here have jobs, and I know a number of people may be retired, but if we keep the working community active and strong, that builds our entire fabric of community. And if we've had investments from state and private sector that have built this opportunity for us to market people for these jobs, be they nanotechnology or chip manufacturing or advanced battery manufacturing, well, now's not the time to pull the rug from under our foundation, under our feet, and say we'll defund those investments that enable us to be robustly competitive in what is a global race. Think about it. When we had the global race on space in the 60s, that era inspired me to look closely at politics as a rather young man and to consider a career in engineering as a young student. And we won that race. Over 40 years ago, we staked the flag on the moon and said, we were the first to conquer that challenge. And it was only U.S. versus USSR. But we won that race because of a passionate resolve. We believed in the mission. We believed in Americans. We came together as a country, regardless of political persuasion, and we invested to win that race. And it unleashed untold amounts of technology and growth and improvement, and enabled us to go from a typewriter that I can recall where you'd peck away to now iPods, where you went from all these leaps of tremendous opportunity in this country that speak to every sector of our economy, from healthcare to education to agriculture to you name it. Where is that passion? Where is that commitment now? And it's not two nations, U.S. versus USSR. It is the U.S. versus a dozen, 24 emerging economies. We're in a race globally with China, Brazil, Japan, Korea, Germany, India. The list goes, Spain. The list goes on and on. And while people are investing with their corporate sector, with the investment in research, so that new product lines come up, we can be sophisticated enough to develop them. But, we grow the intellect of this country with investment in education and higher education, and then not to use it, not to put the formats together for research and all. So that's an order of investment that reigns high with me. Because if we don't continue that commitment, all that investment to date becomes less valuable. And it's the way to really grow jobs in our region. And it's the way to inspire other sectors of the economy. As more and more people have jobs associated with that major axis of high tech, there's all these other big businesses that come into play. Support services that are required for those industries, where service sector grows because more people have available cash. You know, a robust, thriving middle class means greater purchasing power. So the convenience store down the street benefits. The restaurant in the community benefits. It all ripple effects if we invest wisely. So I appreciate the sentiments, Gene, about the thoughtfulness and the presentation of where we need to be. And it's not just incorporating my thinking. It's everybody telling us here are the dynamics that can produce the most hope. And I think this should be about delivering hope to the doorsteps of the individuals of the 20th Congressional District. I think that should be our challenge. That's a priceless commodity if we can deliver hope for the people of the region that you represent. Other questions or comments that people have? Yes. Well, we're going to be right back. Your hand went up second. So we'll do it as we see them.
As you talk about competing with other countries and the nanoscience and the engineering and all of the jobs are being created, how are we supposed to prepare our students to compete for these jobs when education continues to get cut and the distribution of funds are inequitable?
Very good question, because, you know, for us to thrive as a community, 3 orders of investment, of infrastructure are required. Capital infrastructure, having the economic means, having the cash flow available. Physical infrastructure, retrofitting our businesses and our new emerging businesses with the plant and facility that is modern enough, cutting edge enough to be victorious in the economic sweepstakes. And then finally the human infrastructure, the workforce, with the skill set, the training, the education required to enable us to do things effectively. I'm convinced that we can win a number of the contracts out there in the global economy by being smarter, not necessarily cheaper. Being smarter gets you a long way. So, to your point, essential in all of that, right on, spot on with the question, we either invest now or pay dearly later. And it's not just in dollars and cents. Again, it's the moral compass speaking to us. To me, education is about discovery, self-discovery. It's about allowing pulling forth the soul of the individual. The teacher is the powerful agent in the classroom who allows people to understand their strengths, their passions, their abilities. That's education. And then taking it through the years, advancing to higher ed and graduate studies, and training programs, we get the talent we need. To cut that is wrong. And so we need to commit, and commit strongly. You know, this is another point from the federal program. Title I programs need to be funded before we create any others. Let's fund them to the level that was required and to the truest spirit and intent of the law. Title I was supposed to go to struggling first and then, reaching all students. But if it's done correctly without being tweaked politically, you will get the dollars to the districts as they were deserved. Second of all, you raise an interesting fact in the second stage of the battle, which is perhaps more important than the first stage, or as important. You don't only need to get the commitment to education and advance that number in a budget, but then it's how you distribute those monies. And when I was in the State Assembly, we were beginning to do what I thought was right, and then it cooled off. You need to measure the ability to pay at home and also the need in the classroom. And where there is that best combined wealth ratio, as we call it, we need to advance the dollars in that direction, and then everyone prospers. But all districts right now are concerned. They're concerned about eliminating certain programs, remedial programs to read. If you can't read, you're not going to be a good student. And so when we cut these things, we're denying the opportunity for our students. And so I think a sophisticated nation, as ours is, needs to guide itself by what it does for its children in those formative years, because we can't pull back the payment and then point the finger of blame someday at the student for not landing work and not developing a career. So it's the great way to put a down payment on a strong society. Education should reign supreme in our prioritization. Young lady, your question.
I think if you had more jobs around here, the economy would be better.
Absolutely. I think that jobs are still the absolute number one priority in Congress. And the job growth that we can do, again, with the investments that have been made in high tech and innovation, are important. Let me give you a couple other ways that we can grow into jobs. Advanced manufacturing. There are those who would suggest that manufacturing has hit its heyday in America. And I believe that we need advanced manufacturing. By that I mean retrofitting, adjusting what happens under the roof of the business, taking that assembly process. I'm a Milltown kid. I grew up in Amsterdam, carpet city of the world. I saw when the shifts, there were 4 shifts around the clock, and you couldn't produce enough carpets, and people were weavers and designers and engineers in the setting. It was the pulse of our community. You knew it was Sunday because the factories were quiet. Other than that, life was around the clock. And, you know, we say that was our heyday, and we're not going to do manufacturing anymore. No, we need to do advanced manufacturing where you, again, do it smarter, not necessarily cheaper. You build into the system state-of-the-art equipment. Let me give you an example. In Schoharie County, Kintz Plastics was struggling, and then the owner worked with the incubator program at RPI. He was part of the leadership there, and they found how they could take their process with plastics that they manufacture for delivery around the world. They found a way to do it more effectively, more quality-oriented, and they designed some additions to the assembly process. They then needed to train workers on this new equipment, and they reached to Hudson Valley Community College, and they developed for them, through a few workers, the sort of training program that was required. And then those workers trained the newer people coming in. They are now doing very well because of those adjustments. That's advancing manufacturing in a way that makes it cutting edge. You know, we ignored manufacturing as a sector of our economy. We lost well over 6 million jobs in manufacturing in the decade past. And it's because we walked away from it. We focused primarily on the service sector. We ignored agriculture. We ignored manufacturing. I say we as a nation. Congresses and presidents of long ago ignored those factors, and they settled on service sector. And there, very narrowly, primarily on the financial service sector. You know what happened there? Government turned its back and said, play as you want. Regulation won't be in effect. Circumvent regulation. Create derivatives if you need to. That created a terrible outcome. And the ignoring of manufacturing and agriculture and giving favoritism in a consumer-unfriendly way caused the worst havoc in our economy that we could have imagined. And so, you know, it's about prioritization, putting an emphasis on manufacturing. Again, there's an order of investment. If some programs are outmoded, we shut them tight. Others, if we need to invest in that manufacturing to retool, we do it. If we need to train and retrain workers, we do it. We don't need to get jobs created here in the thousands where we can't fill it with our local people. So we need to train, retrain, educate, advance the cause of education, and retrofit our manufacturing centers because they hold great promise so that we as a sophisticated society can continue to produce the best results in a manufacturing realm. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Originally, Watervliet was a working man's town between the Arsenal and Ford's and all the big Bear Mannings. And when that was full bloom, it was a prosperous town. People, you know, had jobs and had enough money to meet their needs, buy houses, and and basically it was founded on manufacturing and job places. And when they went, I'm amazed that Watervliet has held up as well with losing all of that, all that revenue and all those jobs. So is there any chance they will ever come back to small towns?
Well, you know, I think that, again, we need that effort out there to rebuild some of the manufacturing that we have. We've done a great thing here. Your former Congressman, Ron Canestrari, and a number of people, and Congressman McNulty before me, were very instrumental in the Watervliet partnership. And I actually put my name on that bill when Ron was working on it, and it's been very helpful to bring in some innovative ideas into the Watervliet Arsenal site. That shows you that when you have a plan and when you stay focused and you find resources that will enable us to give rebirth to a situation, it's about planning. You know, as an engineer, I believe in planning. I believe in documenting how we're going to get to our goal. And if we don't do that, if we don't strategize, if we don't share the vision, if we don't develop the path on how to get there, no success should be expected. So it's about putting a plan together. And across this country, I think there is such a need for urban investment. Small cities like Watervliet and Cohoes and Schenectady and Amsterdam, my hometown, they require smart growth patterns. They require investment in these areas where we can revitalize the cities. That does more than just build jobs. It creates a public safety element. It brings back that quality to the fabric of the community, which I think is so deserved. So you're right. These places once were booming shelters for jobs, and we need to stay vigilant in our attempt to rebuild that infrastructure. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm not as familiar with your platform as others in this room appear to be, so could you tell me your feelings on gun control issue?
Sure. On the gun control issue, I think gun violence prevention should be addressed today because of the very, very torturous situation in America. We have a bad record as a country. At the same time, I'm a strong defender of the Second Amendment. So we can, I believe, reform and still respect the Second Amendment. Background checks. 40% of our guns are sold without background checks. Who can argue back that it's not responsible to have everyone covered under a background check? Now, I know a number of gun owners, family members, neighbors, friends, who enjoy hunting, enjoy target shooting. They tell me everyone should have that background check. So there's a step of improvement. Gun trafficking. Some of the greatest impacts in our state come from guns transmitted into our region, into our state. We need to be not silent on the issue, but to have language in the law that addresses drug trafficking. Magazine clips, the capacity to fire off so many shots, as we've seen in Aurora, as we've seen in Newtown, as we've seen in other places. I believe, responsibly, we should look at maintaining what is common sense. So there are so many things that can be done, should be done. I'm on measures in the House to reform that while still respecting the Second Amendment. And I think we can do that. I think many of us witnessed the President's close with the State of the Union. And if we didn't, I'll just repeat it. Gabby Giffords, with whom I served, who today is paralyzed somewhat on her one side and has had a very tough challenge in life now. She's had to reprogram her entire thinking and cognitive skills. She deserves a right to walk free before the incident. The parents of Newtown deserve a vote. The parents, the victims of Aurora, deserve a vote. We should bring it to the floor. It shouldn't be held up in committee. Why don't we have the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, given the resources to conduct studies on gun violence? Why is a deep pocket preventing that from happening? Why is our judicial system, judicial branch, precluded from doing its right reviews. Some of these issues are closed within 24 hours and the records are taken away. So there are vast improvements that can be, should be made, and I stand by that agenda. Thank you.
What I'm going to do is thank you for coming.
Pleasure,
I appreciate your presentation, your information, and especially what we can convey now out to the general public. Even, you know, with the group we have here through Channel 17, we'll actually replay it. Congressman, I think you have a few minutes to stay.
Sure.
All right, and then I know there will probably be other questions that people would rather ask individually. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank, I have Charlie Gessio here, who's our board vice chairman. Gene Warner is a commissioner here. I know we got Lori Kaplan. We got Mark Scully, and I know the mayor left. I don't know if he's still around, but I appreciate everybody else here in the room that came, and thank you again for sharing your time.
Thank you, Charlie. And again, let me thank you for the invitation. Let me thank all the leadership in the community for the great opportunity and the right to affordable quality housing, for that being addressed by a great team here in Watervliet. It's an honor to represent you in Washington, and thank you for being such active participants in our efforts to create quality outcomes. And to Channel 17, thank you for the opportunity to share thoughts with the constituency I'm honored to represent, and treasure that awesome responsibility. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us at the Henrata Senior Apartments in Watervliet. And thank you for watching Watervliet's viewers, local television, WVLT. I'm Mary Jo Hughes.